It's made us kind of nuts how bad the coverage has been of the Walmart class action suit deal. What are they actually trying to decide in that case? What's happening?
Well, there's a couple questions, but the really main question is whether class certification in this case was appropriate under Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 23.
All right, then.
Fascinating stuff. Well, what's currently the Supreme Court trying to decide?
This is the largest class action lawsuit in history. The class consists of every woman who has ever worked at Walmart, I believe, since the 1990s. So the class is larger than the entire American military. And the question is whether this case can go to trial with a class of plaintiffs whose complaints are so widely different. They allege all sorts of different kinds of discrimination at different times at the hands of different managers for different reasons and so forth. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said that case could go forward as a single case because it's basically all the same kind of discrimination. I mean, that's the rough description of the case. And the problem with that is that, well, one of the problems with it is it deprives Walmart of the chance to defend itself against these allegations.
Well, exactly. So the case or the charge then becomes Walmart is in general kind of sort of mean toward women.
Right.
And they deserve some money.
That's right.
How are you supposed to defend that?
Yeah, exactly the problem. And of course, in class action lawsuits, once the class is certified, the defendant basically gives up because it's just not worth it to try to defend yourself at that point. The chance, the enormous amount of damages that you face if you lose the case, the size is so gargantuan that defendants always just give up once the class is certified. So this case is really, although technically it hasn't gone to trial, this is really the merits.
Well, so one of the big decisions, well, maybe the big decision might be if the Supreme Court just decides to take it, right? If they're willing to take it, then we'll have all kinds of these coming our way.
If the Supreme Court has taken the case. The question here is whether the court order allowing the class certification to whether that can continue, whether the case can proceed to trial, which means basically that Walmart will give up. So this
so they're not looking at the merits per se; they're looking at the legalities of this being a class.
Yeah, that's right. And now, of course, that requires you to look at what the plaintiffs claim occurred, and you have to assume that what they claim occurred really occurred, and then say could they win the case if these things turn out to be true? So that's what's going on at this point. You don't have facts being introduced to prove anything right now, but the facts are being introduced to show that the class should be certified.
What do you hear is happening? How's it looking?
Well, it went to oral argument last week, and the reports from the people who were there sound like Walmart will probably prevail. It's this is always reading tea leaves because sometimes the justices will sound like they're really against you, and then they rule in favor of you.
Has Clarence Thomas said a damn thing yet?
Not in this case.
Okay, never mind.
He actually has spoken about, 5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, it's been 5 years.
Sentence, something. Yeah, nice. But anyway, this case, what happened was the attorney for the plaintiffs, the women claiming discrimination, he was up there asked to make his argument, and one of the first questions was, now, you're claiming, now, you have to understand, Walmart has no company-wide policy about hiring and firing and promotion and raises and things. That's one of the problems here. The plaintiffs claim that by not having a policy, that is a form of discrimination.
All right.
Okay, and they say the reason why is because...
But they probably don't have a policy toward what to do with midgets either, do they?
So it's discrimination against midgets.
Clearly.
Yeah. And this issue here, the reason why this is so important as a broader matter is because this is an attempt to turn class action lawsuits into a vehicle for leftist social justice claims, in which you can say that not having a central authority in charge who equalizes outcomes is a form of discrimination.
Oh, my God, yeah. So any group, Hispanics could sue Walmart for the same thing, and black people and white people and men and amputees and the aforementioned midgets.
Right, so the idea is if you have a big company and you don't have whatever proportion is deemed appropriate of Hispanics in management, women in management, whatever in management, you automatically are a racist company.
You could be subject to a class action lawsuit like this with crippling damages awards.
What a nightmare. Tim Sandefur is with us from the Pacific Legal Foundation.
What's the whole... Clarence Thomas hasn't said a sentence in 5 years?
Yeah, that's right.
And that sentence was, it's kind of hot in here. Can somebody turn the thermostat on?
These robes are hot. But you're feeling good that justice may well prevail. although
yes,
it's too early to say.
What happened was the justice said, well, you claim on one hand that Walmart has no company-wide policy, which allows for each individual manager to just do whatever he feels like. But at the same time, you're also claiming that Walmart has this big company-wide culture of discrimination that is causing that makes it so it's appropriate to sue Walmart, instead of each individual manager.
Right.
And isn't that kind of contradictory? And there was no real good answer to that question. Because on one hand, they're trying to say, well, the problem here is that by not having a company-wide policy, each individual manager can do whatever he feels like. And then at the same time, Walmart has this company-wide culture of discrimination against women that teaches managers to exercise their discrimination or their discretion in discriminatory ways.
So they don't have tape of the head of Walmart saying at the big company-wide meeting that chicks are stupid.
Yeah,
or,
really.
Boy, broads are worthless. Right. Cooking and screwing is all they're good.
Well, of course,
nothing like that.
To listen to them, actually, the plaintiffs claim that they have just that.
Really?
Yeah, the plaintiffs claim, if you're a manager at Walmart, you go to training in Arkansas and you sit in this class and they teach you things, and the plaintiffs claim that one of the things that you're taught is to discriminate against women.
Oh, come on now.
Yeah, of course, it's ridiculous when you actually look at it. In fact, I sort of misspoke. Walmart does have one company-wide policy about hiring and firing and promotion and things, and that is discrimination is not allowed.
So if Walmart were to lose this, what kind of money do you think you'd be talking about? I mean, just an insane amount?
Oh, yeah, I don't think I can count that high. That's why I went to law school.
But you're saying if the class is certified, they'll throw up their hand and say, we quit, here's a settlement.
I think so.
And it'll be monumental.
Yeah, that's what always happens in these cases. And, of course, the actual women, of course, never get the money. It all goes to the lawyers.
Yeah. You know what, ladies and germs, that is absolutely worth mentioning. That's one of the aspects of it that's driven me crazy watching the coverage on the network news shows, is that, number one, they say the case is just about is Walmart mean to women. And right now there's a really important legal issue being discussed, but the networks assume you're too stupid to understand it, even though Tim has just explained it quite nicely. And the other thing that's made me nuts is they never say that. This is a vehicle for law firms to print money. And then they'll throw you, I mean, it's roughly quarterly. My wife Judy and I get some notice that we're part of some class action because the tires we bought are defective, or the insurance company that we had our car insurance through in the 70s did something wrong. And they always say, we'll get $10.35 out of it if they prevail.
Like in The Jerk, the Steve Martin movie, where he's writing out the checks to each individual person, $1.15.
Right.
It's basically like that. Whereas we lawyers, we laugh all the way to the bank because we write the laws. So we're in charge.
Can you stick around for a little bit since you're here? We want to get to mention your book, which is awesome.
Thank you.
And
The Right to Earn a Living is the title of it. It's on my bedstand right now. Tim Sandefur from the Pacific Legal Foundation with us in studio this afternoon. Tim, thanks again for stopping by, my friend.
Always a pleasure.
Hey, you mentioned
always a pleasure.
You mentioned shut up. You mentioned during the commercials that you're traveling like a fiend this month, going coast to coast multiple times. What do you do? What do you do?
Testifying paternity suits.
You give these speeches. What are you talking about?
I'm speak at a lot of law schools and college campuses about economic liberty and the law and the Constitution and other things. I'm litigating a case challenging the constitutionality of the Obama administration's healthcare law, for example. So I speak at seminars and debates and things. So I just got back yesterday from speaking at the University of Maine Law School in Portland. I'll be heading to D.C. tomorrow morning to speak at Georgetown University, and then I will be speaking at Dartmouth College at the end of the month.
You should have just stayed on the East Coast. You're not that smart.
Yeah.
So, Tim's book is The Right to Earn a Living, and it is great. I mean, not only is it well written and interesting about economic freedom, but it'll make you crazy mad at times, because you'll realize the question of economic freedom, as opposed to freedom of speech, etc., political freedom, has been swept aside completely in our system, even though that was one of the primary freedoms that the Founding Fathers were concerned about. So it'll make a real zealot out of you, as it has me.
That's right. There's really no constitutional basis for treating economic liberty and, say, freedom of speech or freedom of religion differently, and yet our courts always do today. Virtually every court will make it practically impossible for businesses to defend their right to go into business and to make contracts and have those contracts enforced.
Yeah, you're presumed guilty and evil and inadequate, right?
Basically.
So, listen, we're talking about the class action suit against Walmart, in which roughly thousands of women are claiming in the Vegas, or well, in a widely varied way, that Walmart's kind of mean to women. And Walmart is supposed to defend that somehow or no, we're not. Yeah, we are. No, you're not. Guilty. But the case has a lot wider implications, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is an attempt to transform the class action lawsuit, which originally, the reason we have class action lawsuits is so that if everybody's hurt in basically the same way by basically the same company, like everybody drinks the same poisoned batch of Coca-Cola or something,
right,
then you can all just bring
Boy, you're
one
about
trial.
to get acquainted with Coke's lawyers. Won't that be nice?
Pepsi all the way, man. Anyway, you can all just have one trial instead of having 1,000 trials. But that's not how this case is working. What they're doing here is transforming the class action system into a social justice vindication program where they're going to use this as a basis for saying that any company that doesn't equalize outcomes is in violation of the law. And at the oral argument, one of the justices asked the plaintiff's lawyer, well, what would it look like if you won? What are you asking for? And his answer was very interesting. He said the injunction would look like a series of remedial measures that would direct Walmart to provide for detailed criteria by which to make pay and promotion decisions. So in other words, Walmart's entire corporate structure is illegal because they don't have a nationwide plan.
Right.
Which allows local managers to make decisions, which is how it should be, because they know better about what their communities are like, what's going to sell and what's not going to sell in their town, that sort of thing. The decentralized nature of Walmart is what makes it succeed so well. Local stores can make local decisions, but the plaintiffs are claiming that that's illegal. So we were talking about lawyers earlier. I think it's unfair that I don't get the same kind of income that these big class action trial lawyers get. There's nobody in charge of equalizing these outcomes, and it must be a form of discrimination. That's the kind of rationale that's being advanced here.
So if Walmart were to lose this, if it becomes the law of the land, basically, for the biggest company, that exists, isn't Walmart the biggest company in the world?
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, the plaintiff's class in this is larger than the entire American military.
So it's not thousands of women, it's millions. Millions of women. So then the law of the land would be you have to have equal outcomes.
Sort of. I mean, again, this is about...
We're not born equal, we need to end up equal.
Yeah, I mean, this is a procedural question that's in front of the Supreme Court right now, so it wouldn't say that the Constitution or the law requires equal outcomes, but it would say that if there aren't equal outcomes, if you don't have an affirmative action plan to create quotas by which to implement these decisions, that you can be sued.
Which means that the law of the land would be... because
exactly.
if you're a big company,
that's right,
you're going to have to institute that policy or you're screwed.
That's right, because even if you win the case, it costs you so much money in litigation. I mean, you know how much money it must take to get to the U.S. Supreme Court? Now, maybe that's not a lot of money to Walmart, but it's a lot of money to you and me. It certainly is a lot of lawyer hours. So even if you win the case, you end up paying through the nose to defend yourself. And since we don't have loser pays in this country,
Right. Well, and let's be serious. Those bloodsucker lawyers, they're going to run, not walk, down to the local Target and say, we're suing you next. And you just work their way around the city like those scum ADA phony handicapped lawyers do it.
So not to overstate it, but if Walmart loses this, America's ruined.
We might as well just continue the Obama plan and become communists.
We're screwed.
Yes?
We're screwed, yeah. Definitely.
Scroomed. An Armstrong and Getty word. It's a combination of screwed and doomed. We are screwed. Tim Sandefur is on the line from the Pacific Legal Foundation. The book, again, is The Right to Earn a Living. And what's the best website to go to get information on it?
You can find it on Amazon.com, on Barnes & Noble, on the Cato Institute's website. They publish it. So just about anywhere. Just look for The Right to Earn a Living. The Right to Earn a Living. If you can't commit that to memory, you probably can't understand the book. So read it. Anything else of critical interest about this case or anything else before we boot you out of here? Oh, like I said, it sounds pretty optimistic for those defenders of free enterprise, the reports from the court. So I think that in the end, this case will probably be a victory for Walmart, but these sorts of things aren't going away. The vagueness of these laws is a real problem. You know what? Speaking of being stupid, I'm the world's stupidest man. We need to talk a little more in general about economic freedom, the forgotten freedom. If you can hang around for a couple more minutes.
Sure, absolutely. Awesome. We are Armstrong and Getty in for John and Ken on KFI AM 640.